Well, just look at this lot. Lovely jubbly that is. And if I was a carp, I'd scoff that like there's no tomorrow. It's beautiful particle mix. What I'm going to be doing now is putting out my third rod. This one I'm going to fish off the boilies over towards the tree line on the far side of the lake. A lot of carp tend to congregate up there because of the cover, and I reckon I might be able to intercept one or two coming on and off if I put out a bed of particles. Now, to do this I'm going to need to use a spod, which I'll show you a little bit later. But this is the spod mix, and it's a real mixture, this. I must admit that I used to prepare my own particle baits, cooking hemp seed, cooking maize and all that sort of thing. But nowadays I don't bother. I've got really lazy, mainly because of the quality of some of these baits from Dynamite Baits. You can buy their particles in tins, and you can buy them in sweetie jars like this. And the beauty of Dynamite products is that they're always very, very fresh. And the key point is they're actually cooked in their containers. So basically all the juice and the goodness that you boil out of the bait when you cook it yourself is sealed in with this product. So you get mega concentrated, super rich, well prepared particle baits. I must emphasise, if you're going to fish with particles, they must be properly soaked and cooked, because if you put untreated nuts and seeds out in the lake, they'll take on water and there's a danger that the carp will eat them. The seeds will swell up in the carp's gut and cause it all kinds of digestive problems. So you must properly prepare the particles. And to be perfectly honest, these Dynamite products are so good that I don't bother messing with anything else. So what's in the mix? Well, there's a bit of all sorts really. The staple part of any spod mix with particles is hemp seed. So I've got some superb frenzied hemp in there. I've got maize, another great carp catching bait, possibly the best carp bait in the world really, if you look at its results in many different countries. I've got some mini tiger nuts, which are lovely little baits. And then I've got a new product. I've got some mixed particles. Now these are especially good because basically they're nuts and seeds that have been crushed up. So you've got loads of little bits of food there. All the oils and natural sugars in the bait are released that way as well. And the stuff that they come in, it's like a thick jelly, is absolutely packed with starch and sugar. So very attractive product. And what I've done is I've chucked them into one of these spod buckets, which is an excellent product, I must say, even though I designed it myself. This is one of Total Fishing Gear's spod buckets. It's got a removable inner liner, so you can wipe it clean if you want to. You get a freezer block recess in there and a freezer block supplied as standard to keep your bait fresh. And then another key thing is that because the material that's used to construct the bucket is rigid, it will actually stand on its own without collapsing. It's also completely waterproof, so you don't get spod juice dribbling down your leg when you walk into your swim. So it's a terrific product, perfect for spodding. What we need to do now is get a spod and put some of this bait out there. Now, I've already positioned the marker float, and I've already clipped the spod up so that I can cast it at the marker float, and I know that as long as I get the distance right, I'm going to hit that key area every time. It's a little bit like when I was casting the leads to the float. I used the line clip on the reel to control that distance. Well, I've done exactly the same with the spod. Well, here it is, the trusty old spod setup. Obviously we've got a product here which, to those of you who are unfamiliar with it, will look like it needs some batteries, but in fact it doesn't. It's a bait rocket, and basically what happens is you fill this thing with bait, you cast it out, it hits the surface, it tips over, and it pours the bait down into the swim. So it's a very clever device, this. Now, filling a spod is one thing, casting it is quite another, and it's something that you're going to have to practice. If you are going to do an amount of spodding, then you're going to need to get the right setup, quite frankly, because a loaded spod like this could weigh as much as 8 ounces. This one I think weighs about 6, but it's a lot of weight, and you're going to need a special rod to cast a spod. In the old days, we used to use things like beach casters to do the job, but quite honestly, as we've got better at spodding and being able to spod at further and further distance, we've discovered that the rod must have a particular action and it must load fairly slowly. If you were to use a very fast action rod for spodding, you'd find that your spodding wouldn't be very accurate because the spod would tend to deposit loads of bait in flight. You'd find that you wouldn't be able to keep hitting the same mark every time. You want a rod that builds power progressively through the blank. So the rod and reel setup's quite important. Now, this is one of my own spod rods. It's called the Grunt. It's a very powerful rod. It'll cast spods up to 8 ounces, so it'll really go the distance. And certainly when I demonstrate it later on, you'll see that it's very effective at what it's designed for. If you're going to do a lot of spodding, get yourself a big pit reel like this one with a large wide spool. Now the reason for that is that you'll find if you use a normal bait runner for spodding, your arm will be dropping off by the time you've cranked the spod in. You really need plenty of cranking power, and a big reel is going to deliver that to you. This is special braid. It's a yellow fluorescent braid that Total Fishing Gear sell as a spod and marker braid. It's very powerful. It's about 40-pound breaking strain. It's also very thin. It casts like a bullet, and it's perfect for spod and marker work. So there's the basic theory. Let's see what we can do with it. Well, I've got my marker float out in position in the swim, and I've made a few trial casts with the spod and basically clipped it up. So a little bit like the accuracy casting we were doing to the marker float before, I'm using the line clip on the reel to control the distance of the spod, which is quite important actually. So I'm just going to fill the spod up. Good tip with spods is just dip it in the water before you cast it. Increases the weight in the spod and it'll make it more stable during flight. And you can see the benefit there of using the line clip. I've dropped that right next to the float. Very, very accurate indeed. Now the spod's going to turn over, empty its contents. Just give it a couple of seconds for that and then crank it back and refill it. Now this does take some time, and you can see already the benefits of using a big reel, because cranking back a big heavy weight like this for sometimes up to an hour if you do a lot of spodding, it really begins to tire you out. So the big reel makes it much, much easier. It's a really good idea to invest in one of these for spod work. Now, one of the things that a lot of people do when they're spodding, and it's a mistake, is to try to retrieve the spod too quickly. Just give it a few seconds to empty out. I've actually done a little bit of underwater filming of spods in the past, and I know that it takes them just a few seconds to empty their contents, so don't chuck it and retrieve it immediately. Just allow it to bob up to the surface and spill the payload. The amount of bait you put out really depends on how long you're fishing for, how many fish are in the lake. You can put out just a few spods accurately, or put a bigger spread of bait. I'm not going to go mad here because I haven't got long at the lake. I'll probably put out about 20 to 25 spods, and that's a fair old carpet of bait. Certainly enough to stop any cruising fish in their tracks. That's going out really nice actually, very, very tight.